Welcome back, everybody, or welcome from scratch here if you just joined. So we hope you had some inspiring workshops and gained some new perspectives, and hopefully also interacted a little bit with the other participants here on the first day of the conference. And I'd like to thank also again the drivers of the workshops, Melissa and Lee and Kate. Not sure if they're still around, but thanks again. And I'm very excited to introduce our closing keynote for today, Joy Owango. So Joy is a member of the steering group of the International Science Council. There she's involved in exploring the role of publishing in the scientific enterprise, and also specifically focusing and asking on how the current publishing system can be maximized to benefit the global science landscape. She's also founding director of the Training Center in Communication. This is a center that specifically trains scientists at the postgraduate level in Africa in communication. And the center has trained over thousands of scientists in communication from more than 70 institutions, and has also started and maintained partnerships with several universities throughout Africa, specifically Kenya and Nigeria, and the Innovation Hub in South Africa. And on top of that, Joy is also a member of the board of Africa Archives, the free preprint server for African scientists. And so throughout all this work, it is already quite clear that Joy is a very strong believer in open science practices, and also in being open science a driver in the democratization of higher education. And on top of that, also through the Training Center in Communication, a strong supporter of early career researchers. And this is making us specifically happy that you are here today and that you are talking to us as early career researchers on the topic of your talk today will be African open science perspectives through strategic partnerships and its impact on global dynamics on responsible research. Thank you so much for being here, Joy, and now the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. It's an honor to be invited to give the keynote speech at the end of your conference today. And good evening from Nairobi, and I believe it's still in the afternoon in Berlin. So I'll get to it right now. Unfortunately, I cannot put on my video. The video is not working, but you can clearly see my picture there. And so let me get to it. So my talk is on the African open science perspectives through strategic partnerships and its impact on global dynamics on responsible research. When you're looking at responsible research, those who tend to suffer the most on irresponsible research are early career researchers, especially from the global south and particularly Africa. So in this case, I'll share with you what is currently happening from an open science perspective in Africa, and how we are creating strategic partnerships such that there's responsible research being done in the continent, which in turn helps increase the visibility of African research output. I'm the executive director of the Training Center in Communication. We're a research capacity trust, which is hosted at the University of Nairobi. I am the founding director, and it's a 15-year-old organization. And over the last 15 years, we've been supporting researchers in improving their research output and increasing their visibility through scholarly and science communication. As you can see in the image on the right, it covers the entire research life cycle of researchers. So from research idea to the entire enterprise to publishing and understanding the publishing landscape, especially open access and its impact on their visibility. Our mission is to increase in profile local and internationally of African science and its impact on the life of Africans by improving skills in technical communications in all forms. our values when it comes to working with our collaborators is we are collaborative, supportive, and goal-oriented. And this actually influences the type of strategic partnerships we are making in the continent in supporting early career researchers. We train, support, and empower researchers through capacity in improving their research output and visibility, and this is through the scholarly and science communication training. So when it comes to institutional capacity strengthening, we focus on the institutional research lifecycle of the higher education sector. So that is granting councils, research councils, university commissions, ministries of education, and libraries. And as such, the capacity strengthening ecosystem is placed in 3 levels: education, facilitation, and partnership. So let's have a look at how Africa has been performing in the last couple of years. So in the last 10 years, so between 2012 and we projected the data, we got the data for 2023, Africa has produced over 1.6 million research publications. We're looking at all 54 countries and the ocean islands. And out of this, 40.6 of the output is open access. So what does this tell you? It means that we are going the open access route. And because of that, it means that African research is also increasing in visibility. When it comes to the fact that we are going the open access route, it comes with a few challenges. So one of the challenges is the dynamics when it comes to open science and open access. And when I talk about the dynamics, we are looking at prohibitive costs when it comes to article processing costs for early career researchers. That is number one. Number two, we are looking at challenges when it comes to peer review, especially when it comes to the bias in peer review. So because of some of these concerns, one of the things that we've decided to do is, number one, create an ecosystem that can support not only early career researchers, but then leadership within universities, ministries of education, and library consortia within the region. So let's start with early career researchers and also mid-level researchers. So one of the things we've been doing is advancing scholarship in 2 ways. Number one, guiding researchers on how they can mitigate predatory publishing, especially African researchers, by showing them some of the platforms that exist within the continent that they can access African publications. But beyond that, understanding what it takes to produce good quality journals. And that is in partnership with the African Journals Online. Then still under advancing scholarship, we noticed that there's bias in peer review when it comes to researchers from the global south. And some of the challenges that could lead to this bias is English is not necessarily our first language, and this could impact on how we present our work. Or there's also a pre-existing bias on the belief that the quality of our research is not the best simply because we're coming from the global south. So in partnership with pre-review, IDA Africa and Africa Archive and eLife publications, what we did was come up with a training program called the African Peer Reviewers Program, whereby we were training African researchers on the process of peer review, but most importantly, the biases in peer review and recognizing the biases in peer review. Now, when it comes to research excellence and maximizing research, we noted that even though we are talking about open science and open access, it doesn't necessarily mean that the free resources that are shared in the continent are of good quality. And we are talking about responsible research here. So as much as you're giving content for free, it has to be good quality research. So one of the things that we did with our partners, and this is with Digital Science and Knowledge Unlatched, we identified platforms that provided good research discovery solutions, but had content on Africa and were willing to index content from Africa. And these are some of the things we noted, because if you look at some of the leading open access or open science-based research discovery solutions, they have a very limited content on Africa, and it fits the purpose of having a free resource which doesn't have content coming from the region where you're providing the content. So because of this, we've been working closely with vice chancellors, deputy vice chancellors, and leadership in universities in making sure that they have access to these resources. But sometimes we go a step ahead and work with ministries of education, library consortia, and research councils to make sure that these resources are accessible nationally. So think Web of Science, think Scopus, but the free version, but with more content on Africa. Now, when you're looking at open science is a great foundation that will support and lead to responsible research in the continent. Why? Because open science builds equity in research. It helps increase the visibility of researchers, especially early career researchers who are beginning their career in their research field. They will heavily rely on open science to support them in their entire ecosystem. So we are working with PLOS and working with ministries of education, regional councils, and institutes as well in creating awareness on open science such that governments can adopt open science practices, which in turn the ripple effect will be felt within the universities, but also within the universities, we are working with the leadership in the universities to make sure that they adopt open science practices and policies, which will support early career researchers. Now, finally, the other ecosystem, part of the ecosystem we're also working on is creating research sovereignty. One of the biggest problems African researchers have faced is loss of data. And this is primarily through collaboration. It's not only an African issue, it's a global South issue. And then sharing with libraries and library consortia on library literacy, especially when it comes to open data and protection of data, thus increasing sovereignty of research is important, such that when early career researchers, or really any researcher, is working with a collaborator, they know that their data is protected. Not only is it protected, that creates research sovereignty, but it also helps in increasing visibility because the databases that we work with provide digital object identifiers, which makes harvesting of data much easier. So we get this in partnership with Figshare and Africa Archive. So on to the strategic partnerships. So working with digital science and their partner Dimensions, we successfully launched Dimensions, which is an open access research discovery platform in 13 African countries. In this case, we work with ministries of education, research councils, library consortia, and sometimes research councils. This was so successful that it was published in PLOS One, and there was a comparative analysis that was done between Dimensions, Web of Science, and Scopus, and they found out that Dimensions has more data on African research output than any other platform that already exists, which is extremely important because if you're looking at responsible research, it means also allowing that region to also contribute in providing the research output coming out, that is coming out from that particular region. And that is what we are not seeing from some of these existing platforms. At the same time, what we went and did was we went ahead and index some of the major stakeholders in higher education in Africa. So that is the Association of African Universities. It's the umbrella association for all universities in Africa. We indexed African Journals Online, which is a bibliographic database for only African journals. Think of it as the sister of Directory of Open Access Journals. This platform is it's only indexed in Dimensions. There is no other organization in the world that has indexed African Journals Online, which also helps in increasing African output. Now, when you look at the current situation in Africa, in what is helping in making sure that our work is accessible and visible is that there's been a lot of push for open science, and there's policy being created or pushed within the region. So as you can see, in Ethiopia is the first country to have an open access policy. We are looking at South Africa, which has reached the second draft. The East African community through the East African Parliament is looking at creating an open science policy amongst all the 7 East African countries. The Association of African Universities is one of the partners that is trying to create open access policies in all the member universities in Africa. So you're looking at about 400 universities in Africa. So when it comes to policy dialogue, we are working, as I said, with PLOS in creating awareness on open science at a regional, national, and institutional level. And in this case, at a regional level, we are working with UNESCO and East Africa with the East African Parliament and UbuntuNet, which is a regional education network, which focuses on open data and creating awareness on open data and responsible use of data in the region. When it comes to institutional open science mandates, one of the things we noted is that of the 1,225 universities in Africa, only 36 have open access mandates. There is none that has an open science mandate, which is a cause for concern, because if you're looking at responsible research, you need open access or open science mandates within the institute, which will support early career researchers in increasing their visibility. And the fact that vice chancellors have been very cautious about the visibility of adopting open science, we are increasingly working with them in creating awareness on the need to have open science mandates, but that also means having Senate meetings with these universities. So these are some of the institutions where we've had Senate meetings: University of Pretoria, Botswana International University of Science and Technology, that was last week, the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and we have a few lined up for Q1 next year. So when it comes to repositories, so we're looking at the entire sphere of open science and how it can support increasing the visibility of African research output and also promoting responsible research. We have a few repository partners that we are working with. So number one, Figshare. The objective of working with Figshare is training libraries and library consortia on the FAIR principles in order to increase the profile locally, internationally of African science. Okay, so the FAIR principles is extremely important because when universities or institutions are using repositories to store data, sometimes it is not accessible. So training the libraries on how to use the FAIR principles or adopt the FAIR principles also helps in increasing the visibility of the research. So by FAIR principles, I mean the repository needs to be findable, accessible. The platform needs to be interoperable with any other platform globally, and the data has to be reproducible. So working with Figshare, what we're also doing is further increasing the visibility of African research by providing them with free platforms like Dimensions and Altmetric, which also helps in increasing the visibility of African output and also provides extra resources for conducting research for African scientists. Our partner is also now in a global partnership with UNESCO, which is really important because UNESCO has already noted their valuable contribution to the global effort for open science as well. So Figshare is also one of our partners when it comes to indexing outputs in Africa Archive, which I'm going to talk about just shortly. Okay, so with Figshare, once again, it also provides data sovereignty because it provides digital object identifiers for any of the research outputs and data that is produced by early career researchers. This is extremely important because, as I said earlier on, one of the biggest challenges in conducting research in Africa is loss of data, particularly through collaborations. And I've talked about the FAIR principles, and this is one of the activities we are doing with Figshare on creating awareness on library literacy, especially when it comes to data management and understanding the principles of open data, the FAIR principles and the CARE principles. So these are some of the partners that Figshare is working with. This is one of our partners in South Africa. And also collaborating with one of the biggest regional networks in providing this platform for African researchers as well and institutes. Now, Africa Archive. So if any of you are familiar with preprints, you will be familiar with archive and anything related to the preprint repository ecosystem. If you are not, I'll explain. So preprints are now increasingly getting popular in the academic publishing workflow because they are seen as a precursor to publishing, and they also help in your journal selection strategy. When you have a preprint, it means that once you're going through your journal selection strategy, people can see your manuscript, they can download it, and they can also cite it. The beauty about preprints is that they are either subject specific, like social archive, agri archive, paleo archive, med archive, which is very popular, or bio archive, or they can be national, like Green Archive, China Archive, or India Archive, or they could be institutional, like UniPress, that is for UNISA Press, that is from University of South Africa, preprint, or University of Pretoria preprints, or they can be regional. And when we are regional, we have some like Africa Archive, which is a preprint repository that accepts manuscripts at a continental level and also on research that is being done on and about Africa. So you could be a European, but doing research on and about Africa, you can put your manuscript in Africa Archive. So other than being a preprint repository, what we did is, in order to increase the visibility of output coming out of the continent, we went a step ahead and started mapping repositories, all African digital repositories. So we've created an interactive map of all 54 countries, of all repositories in those 54 countries, all right? And out of that, it is granular to the point that you can also see the research areas that have been indexed within those platforms. The reason why we are doing this is to improve the discoverability of African research and its publications, enhance the interoperability of existing and emerging African repositories. We're also trying to identify ways through which digital scholarly search engines can enhance the discoverability of African research. So this is why it's essential. And this also promotes responsible research because, one, you're able to see African research. Two, all these repositories also have digital object identifiers. So African research is also protected. And number three, the fact that repositories are now increasing, are also becoming important. We are in a situation whereby now the fact that they are indexed, you're also going to see more of African research, and also early career researchers have an opportunity to have their work showcased as they're going through their general selection strategy. Okay. So now, with all said and done, there's still concerns about open science in Africa and the adoption of open science. And one of the things that we are seeing is that as partners, we were working with partners, and we noted that when we're doing our activities with vice chancellors, one of the things they said that is they felt that there was little awareness on open science among higher education institute administrators. I'm just reading out the most important ones. And there's a poor attitude towards open science and open access. And also they feel that there's a perception that free means low quality. And they felt that there's a lack of mindset change when it comes to open science contributors. Now, when you see some of these concerns, you realize it has a ripple effect on early career researchers, because if your institutional leaders are not adopting open science, early career researchers will get the short end of the stick, because when they adopt open science practices, it won't be considered as responsible research. It would be considered as credible output. So this is why, as a center, we are trying to make sure that through strategic partnerships that open science is adopted, such that all types of research output and progressive academic publishing research is also recognized as good quality research. Okay, finally, what are they saying needs to be done so that we can have we can have responsible research, especially when it comes to with the investment of open science? Number one, there's a need to enact workable and implementable policies to promote open science within institutions. There needs to be recognition and awards for outstanding researchers, especially those who use open science systems. The elements of copyright and common license initiatives should be well developed and spelled out. Now, with what I've just shared with you, it is really essential for us to understand that when you come as early career researchers, there are systems that will come to fore that will support you. And in this case, it's open science. And for us in Africa, in order for open science to be adopted effectively, it means that we need to have strategic partnerships that will in turn support early career researchers, which will be implemented by university leaders. And in turn, if it is implemented by university leaders, it means that the whole research life cycle will be supported, and the dynamic on responsible research will be effected, because it means that early career researchers are protected and they are free to use open science practices that will in turn help increase the visibility of their output and also of their research organizations. Thank you so much for listening to my talk. Verena?
Thank you so much, Joy, for this inspiring talk. I think a lot of questions came up, and I think a lot of important topics were covered. And I think we can just actually start with looking at the questions that we collected on the Etherpad. So maybe I just start. The first question was actually from my side. In the very introductory part of your talk, I saw when you were showing the amount of publications from Africa and quoting that right now it was 1.6 million per year.